I'm James Menendez. Today on NewsHour, the Georgian government withdraws a controversial draft law that sparked 2 days of unrest, but the opposition say the protests will continue. Also, activists block roads in Israel in another day of demonstrations against proposed judicial reforms there. That's BBC NewsHour at 9 on 93.9 FM WNYC.
WNYC is supported by Brooklyn Solar Works, a Brooklyn-based solar design and installation firm bringing clean energy to homes in New York City. More information is available at brooklynsolarworks.com or 347-377-2705. Leadership funding for WNYC is provided by the Jerome L. Green Foundation, a proud supporter of New York City's major cultural institutions.
Find out what happens when technology meets creativity. Join iconic theater group The Civilians in the green space as writers and performers let artificial intelligence take the wheel and create unique performances in real time using ChatGPT. It's an evening perfect for fans of live theater, music, AI, or all three. Monday night at 7, tickets at wnyc.org/thegreenspace.
If I were a rich man, yabba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dum. All day long I biddy-biddy-bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. Yabba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dum. If I were a biddy-biddy rich, idle-diddle-diddle-diddle man, I'd build a big tall house with rooms by the dozen, right in the middle of the town. A fine tin roof.
The biggest bank and a new chapter in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Fidelity. A dedicated Fidelity advisor can help create a wealth plan for a full financial picture. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC.
I'm David Brancaccio in New York. The biggest of banks, JPMorgan Chase, is suing one of its former top executives. The bank claims Jess Staley entangled the company with disgraced financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and aided in Epstein's sexual abuse and trafficking of girls. Marketplace's Nova Safo is here with more.
And David, JPMorgan is making some very serious charges against Jess Staley. He was JPMorgan's former head of private banking and had been considered even a potential successor for CEO Jamie Dimon. Staley left the bank in 2013, went to become CEO at another financial heavyweight, Barclays, and then resigned in 2021 because of his Epstein ties. And while Staley was at JPMorgan, the bank claims that Staley vouched for Epstein, protected him, even as public allegations were made against him. And the bank says Staley did it to keep Epstein as a client. Now, these allegations were made in complaints filed yesterday in Manhattan Federal Court. JPMorgan also is accusing Staley of having firsthand knowledge of Epstein's crimes, and JPMorgan is accusing Staley of committing sexual abuse himself. Now, there has been no comment from Staley or his lawyers. He has previously expressed regret for his relationship with Epstein and said he didn't know what Epstein was doing.
Now, Nova, to understand JPMorgan suing Staley like this, we have to remember there are two other lawsuits which seek to hold JPMorgan Chase responsible for maintaining ties with Epstein.
Right. Those lawsuits were brought by one unidentified woman and by the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands. And they say JPMorgan should have known what was going on, and had it not continued to do business with Epstein, it would have made it more difficult for Epstein to maintain his sex trafficking operation. Now, JPMorgan is defending itself against those lawsuits, but what it's saying in the new filings is that if it were to be found liable in those suits, it's Staley who should pay part or all of the damages.
Nova Safo, thank you. Markets, Dow futures are up 0.1%. S&P futures are up just slightly. NASDAQ futures are down less than 0.1%. Now, in the peer-reviewed journal Nature, evidence that it's possible to create a superconductor at room temperature. This would be a technique to move electricity without the wasteful resistance that produces losses through heat. You can do that now if you make the system cold. I mean, cold. If the University of Rochester-based researchers are really onto something, this could lead to longer batteries, trains that levitate, highly efficient power grids. Now, it's also true that Nature had to retract a paper from the same group on another superconductor, and an accompanying news article Also in Nature carries the cautious headline, hopes raised for room temperature superconductivity, but doubts remain.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where research on how to find a protein that keeps cancer cells alive is leading to new therapies for some blood cancers. Learn more about this momentum at danafarber.org/stories.
We like to take the economic pulse here, checkups from a range of perspectives. The boom in vinyl records has been good business for record shops, many of which have seen a new and more diverse generation of customers come through their doors. Rene Perez is owner of Sonido del Valle, a record store in the Los Angeles neighborhood of Boyle Heights, focused on Latin music records. Rene left his job as a cook to start the enterprise, and he's kept it thriving through pandemic. He told us his story.
So this is one of my favorite newer records. My name is Rene Perez, and I own a record store in Boyle Heights, which is a part of East LA. We've been doing it now for about 5 years. LA has a really long and rich history of Latin record labels that have been here since the beginning of recorded music. And Latin music, like cumbia, bachata, salsa, corridos, everything, it's always been around, and I've always heard it in passing, but I didn't actually grow up listening to it. I kind of got into it through DJing. I was just sort of drawn to it, and that's what kind of made me want to start specifically focusing on that as our main thing. I was surprised that there wasn't already a shop nearby. I think, when we opened, there was one, and they weren't really carrying, a lot of local artists or even Latin music. So we thought there was definitely a void that we can fill with our shop, and that's kind of what we've been known for since, So it was always a big dream of mine to have a record store. I felt what better way to get cool records than to have your own shop, right? So I would say since I started buying records, I would always dream about working at a shop or owning a shop. In high school, I was buying CDs every week. Whenever I had any money, I would buy CDs. I'd go to Tower Records when they were open, I'd go to Warehouse when they were open, and sometimes I'd go to record stores. But the reason I started buying vinyl is because I had friends in high school who told me, hey, you can buy that Cure record for $2 at Goodwill instead of paying $15 for the CD. And they were right. And so it started out that way. It wasn't really because it was vinyl and it sounded better, honestly. It was just because I was broke and I was in high school. We have our slow parts of the year and we have our busy parts of the year, and so we kind of have to ride the waves and do what we can to stay afloat. It's not easy having, a brick and mortar shop these days, but I feel like people do still want to come and dig and discover stuff, and I feel like that's what we do best. Vinyl, it's definitely popular. Now people have had a taste for, streaming and a taste for physical media, and I think there's a lot of people who want that, tangible item to hold and to read and to look at, and I think that's not going to go away. And now, we have people from, as young as 13 to as old as 80 who come here regularly, for Latin records. We have people coming from Europe, we have people coming from South America, we have people coming from Mexico City to buy Mexican records here. Since I had just gotten out of the kitchen, I knew I had to push hard and make this work. Otherwise, I would have been screwed because I had no other job. I knew it was either this or start looking for another, cooking job or be a janitor somewhere, basically, So I really wanted to make it work, and I just gave it 110%, and it ended up working out, I think, If anybody really wants to open up a record store, they can do it. I mean, if I can do it, you can definitely do it. It's hard, but it's not that hard if you love it.
Rene Perez, owner of Sonido del Valle in East Los Angeles, in an economic pulse produced by Marketplace's Jarrett Dang. In New York, I'm David Brancaccio with our morning report. From APM, American Public Media.